Exodus chapter 19. Chapter 19 talks about the new dispensation, that is the giving of the law. And we heard even last week through that rabbi, I was waiting to hear what she would say about the law. And she did make a mention that the law did nothing different. If you remember, what she said was there's something called oral law, oral tradition. That oral tradition changed into what? Written tradition. The written tradition is what became the 10 Commandments. So, there are very interesting things which surround this event of giving of the 10 Commandments. So, chapter 19 verse 1 says, in the third month after the Israelites left Egypt, on the very day they came to the desert of Sinai. After they set out from Rephidim, they entered the desert of Sinai, and Israel camped there in the desert in front of the mountain. Verse 3 says, then Moses went up to God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain, and said, this is what you are to say to the house of Jacob, and what you are to tell the people of Israel. You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. When the language is so powerful, he says, I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Did you see that phrase? Brought you to myself. This is the God we have, that He would not let us go. He said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. You know, you can really enjoy these words of God in your personal lives when you go through a personal situation. That the way He takes care of you, provides for you, and He's there by your side at the time of your need. This verse, I will never leave you nor forsake you, is so dear to me. I lost my dad in 2001, April. It almost looked like the whole life shattered. And that's the time a pastor came home and said, Chandra, here is a promise I want to give to you at this time. Usually the trend in the Christian circle is you give a promise at the time when it's a glad occasion. Maybe it's a baptism, or maybe a birthday, or maybe any good glad occasion. But I was surprised to see this man come and give me a promise and said, here is a promise you need to claim. It's now 11 years after I lost my dad. I look back and see. And that is so true. He never left me nor forsook me. And I'm sure this is what your testimony is. This is what you have gone through. Even during those high tides, ebbing times. But you always knew that there was somebody beside you. You know, the way God provides for us is so amazing. I want to share with you a testimony. After I came back from New Jersey, a sister called me and said, there is a song, I don't know who to ask. Would you sing this song and upload it on the YouTube for some people in the other part of the world? I said, okay, I can do that. So me and Ruth came and I played the piano here and then sang that song, uploaded it on the YouTube. 3 days ago, I got a mail from a guy who I'd never met. And this is what this mail says. Whenever I'm happy or I'm sad, I always sing that song. And I was looking for that song on the YouTube. When I typed that song, the first link that I saw was yours. I heard that song. Tears rolled down my cheeks. And he's a musician himself. So he said, I played that song 10 times after I heard you singing. And then when I saw your link and said, there's some more videos, let me see who this guy is. So he went to listen to some of the messages. And there was one message I did not post it on or share the link on the Facebook. I still kept it on the YouTube because I wanted to bring it later. And this guy straight went to that link and heard the message. And that was the one that I spoke last Sunday. The choice that Peter made and the choice that Judas Iscariot made. When I look at this, people at different places in different times of need may not have their family or their pastor or their closest people around, but you will always have God with you. When I heard that story from that boy, I never met that boy. I don't know who that boy is. But see how God used a song. Somebody wanted me to play it for somebody else so that they can learn the tune. And God used it for a boy in Washington, Seattle. See, God works in miraculous ways. And he said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. His presence, he always said, I will keep it with you. So when I hear such live testimonies, I'm so encouraged. When some brothers and sisters come back and tell me, that message was for me. God spoke to me through that. God answered my questions in my life. We get so excited. We are so thankful to God. Here, what God is telling the Israelites is, hey, I put you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. What a wonderful word that is. I brought you to myself. And then, he's making some very powerful words, powerful statements now. Verse 5, now if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all the nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine. Did you see that phrase? The whole earth is mine. Although the whole earth is mine, then out of all the nations you will be my treasured possession. Exactly the same thing that we discussed last week with the rabbi. Remember what I said? You are a chosen people. You're a chosen people. Of course, she had her own explanations. You are chosen people. Okay. And why did he do that? Verse 6. You will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites. So this is a special call that God is giving to the Israelites. Remember, these are very powerful words. Just like Genesis 12 has the record of God calling Abraham and said, you're mine. I'll bless you. Okay? And here God is now talking to the whole nation and says, you, the whole nation, you are my children. You are my treasured possession. What do you mean by treasured possession? If somebody tries to mess with your treasured possession, are you going to react or not? You will react. You will react. You know what are the treasured possessions of some people in the church? Their spot in the pew. I mean, people are very sweet and nice until you sit in their pew, until you sit in their spot.
I have a friend and they had to put her name in her chair because that's where she wanted.
There are people who would say, who would not accept. I mean, anybody can sit anywhere, but we build up a tradition. So that's my place. That's my place in the church. I remember one of the professors of Golden Gate Seminary was telling us this example. There was a church which wanted to move. This happened in Atlanta, Georgia. So they wanted to move from the suburbs to the city so that they can be available to more people. So in the business meeting, they all were talking, and then there was a motion that we move the church to the city. So one senior man got up and said, I want to amend the motion. What is amend the motion? That we don't move from this church. So in the, you have time to discuss. So they said, why don't you want to do that? That is my pew, and I always sat by that pillar. So there was another senior lady, she got up and said, I want to make an amendment. So the third amendment was that we shall move, but leave Mr. Abraham with his pew and the pillar right there. See, your car, your house, your name, all these are what? Treasured possessions. Somebody messes with that, you don't tolerate. God is telling this to this nation. From that day on till date, you see if that's not true. Anybody who tried to mess with his children, what did God do? Always defended his children. Always defended them. So that's the promise God gave. So what happens is, I heard somewhere, when you're happy, don't be excited and make a promise, is what I heard. When you're too excited, don't make a promise. Okay? What did these people do? So Moses, verse 7, so Moses went back and summoned the elders of the people and said before them all the words the Lord had commanded him to speak. This is exactly what they did. They got so excited and they made a promise. What is that? The people all responded together, we will do everything the Lord has said. So Moses brought their answer back to the Lord. Now, till now, God did not really tell them any details. But they have already said, we will do whatever you want to say. We will do whatever you want to tell us. Okay? And what happened? In the later part of the story, God gave them, okay, you want to do everything whatever I want to say? Here are the 10 commandments. And for the last thousands of years, man has been failing and failing and failing. Therefore, you need to be very careful what you talk, okay? Then the Lord said to Moses, and this is what he's saying, that I want to come and talk to you guys. Okay? You need to get ready before God speaks. See, I want you to understand that when in the olden days, when God personally wanted to come and talk to his children, they had to purify themselves. Look at verse 10. The Lord said to Moses, go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow. Have them wash their clothes and be ready by the third day, because on that day the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. So if God had to come, what did these people have to do? They had to consecrate themselves. What are they trying to do? You can never reach that point, but they had to rectify themselves. They had to sanctify themselves. They had to purify themselves for God to be able to come and speak to them. Now, pause here a minute and go fast forward. What about Jesus Christ? Now think about what Jesus Christ did. He changed everything. When he came, what is Jesus? What is one of the titles that Jesus has? He is a friend of sinners. He is a friend of sinners. When that lady was touching his feet, people said, oh, see, who's touching his feet? She's a wicked woman. She's an immoral woman. How is he allowing her to touch her? When Jesus touched a leper, instead of the disease coming to Jesus, his healing flowed into the leper. So when Jesus came, he changed everything. You get the point? And that's why he says, come as you are. Come as you are. Here it is not the story. Did you see that? Here it is not come as you are. He says, I have some laws for you. I have some rules for you. Follow these rules. And only then, I'll tell you one more place. I want to show you here in chapter 19. He says, verse 21. And the Lord said to him, go down and warn the people so they do not force their way through to see the Lord, and many of them perish. Even the priests who approach the Lord must consecrate themselves, or the Lord will break out against them. Did you see that? This is the kind of God who changed the whole perspective and sent Jesus as a human being to the people. Now here he says, even if the priests were consecrated. If they touch this mountain, they will die. And that's why Colossians says, what Jesus is what? He is the image of the invisible God. But what did Jesus do? He became the man. He became the mediator. He became the bridge between people and God. So, what I'm trying to say is, you need to be thankful to God that you were not living at that time. Right? You're not living at that time when you had to sanctify yourself. And he says, for 2 days you have to sanctify yourself. They were to wash your clothes. And then on the third day, verse 16, on the morning of the third day, there was thunder and lightning with a thick cloud over the mountain and a very loud trumpet blast. Everyone in the camp trembled. Okay? So this is the sign that God is now coming down and talking. I want you to also look at one simple nugget about the calling that God gives to His children. Look at verse 17. Then Moses led the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. Did you see where the people are? They are at the foot of the mountain. Look at verse 20. The Lord descended on the top of the mountain, Mount Sinai, and called Moses to the top of the mountain. Now, does it say Moses went up on his own? It is only by invitation. It's only by a call that God gave to Moses and said, Moses, come up. And all the people saw God calling Moses. I'll tell you one thing. The reason I'm talking about this is, unfortunately, there are many self-appointed teachers, self-appointed preachers, self-appointed pastors, and self-appointed so-called men and women of God. One thing you must remember, that there's one beautiful verse in Acts. Here, Gamaliel says these words. If their purpose or activity is of human origin, it will fail. Chapter 5 and verse 38. If their purpose or activity is of human origin, it will fail. But if it is from God, you will not be able to stop these men. You will only find yourselves fighting against God. So therefore, we must know that when you are called for ministry, it has to be from God. Because if you don't, what will happen? It will just fizzle away. Okay, the self-appointed people, don't they do mighty things? Sure, they will. Are they not successful? Yes. Are there not big crowds coming to them? Sure. Now, so the question is like, who is the real guy? The answer to this question is, the one who is called by God, as Acts 5:39 says, or 38 and 39 says, if it's from God, it will last. The fruit must last. If it does not, it will go away. It will go away. It will just go like chaff. The wind blows it away and the flower fades away and the place knows it not. That's how it will be. So therefore, we thank God for a man like Moses, that God was again and again proving that He had called him for this leadership position. Now tell me something at this point. Is there anybody who can contest and challenge Moses and say, no? Of course, they kept doing it even though the people saw God calling Moses again and again. If you come to Numbers chapter 16 and 17, you find there's a big rebellion going on. Is God speaking to you only? Is God speaking to you and Aaron only? Is He not speaking to us? People have rebelled against Moses. But God uplifted Moses. You see what happened? You find Moses even in the New Testament, is it not? On the Mount of Transfiguration. On the Mount of Transfiguration. This man is standing with Jesus. So therefore, please understand that If God wants to give you a call, you will recognize that call. And a believer must be able to discern whether this man is called of God or he is self-appointed. You must always ask God for that discernment. Okay? So Moses went up. You see this? So Moses went up. What does it mean? He obeyed God's call. Okay. Now look at verse 24. The Lord replied, "Go down and bring Aaron up with you." So he is now, what is Moses doing in all this? He is obeying God in every step. God says, "Come up," he comes up. God says, "Go down," he goes down. Right? So Moses is showing a great obedience as a sign, as a model, as an example to all the people. Is it not? See, when the topmost guy obeys God, obviously all the others will obey. Look at what happened in the story of David and Goliath. David killed Goliath. What happened? The moment Goliath fell down, who are the people who got courage? All the others. When the leader strikes and shows the victory, the others also will pick it up. I want you to study or do some homework. Study 1 Samuel chapter 17 and 1 Chronicles chapter 20. Study these two chapters. You know, what you'll find is, in 1 Chronicles chapter 20, you will find a list of some of the heroes of David's army. And you will find what these people did. What these people did. You know why all these people, they killed these giants? Because they have a leader around them who had proven and killed a giant. This applies even in a family situation. Even in a family situation. As parents, we present an example to the kids. The kids will just take it and run. They'll just take it and run. If we are bad examples, they'll just follow bad example. If you are good examples, they'll follow. So the same thing in a church situation. Pastor, like people is what I always say. You always have a proverb. You have a proverb which says, like king, like people. Like king, like people. I say, like pastor, like church. And you see, at this point of time, these people have sanctified themselves. They see their leader obeying God. And then what? And that is when God says, go down and bring Aaron up. Okay? When Moses went down, what happened? That's where chapter 20 starts. And God spoke all these words. What do you find that big list? Up to verse 17? That's the 10 commandments. Okay? Now let's try to do a little bit. When Jesus spoke, so God spoke these 10 commandments, who heard these commandments? Come again? Moses and Aaron? Think about it. Now come to chapter 19 and last verse, verse 25. So Moses went down to the people and told them. Where is Moses? He was upon the mountain. God asked him to go down to bring Aaron up. So before he brought Aaron up, what happened? God spoke. So how many people heard God giving the 10 commandments? Think about it. Okay, let me put the sequence here once again. God asked him to come up. He spoke a little. He said, go down and bring Aaron up. So Moses went down. Moses is now with the people. He is now supposed to bring Aaron up. And then before he even brings Aaron up, God speaks. So where is Moses? With the people. He's with the people. So how many people heard God giving the 10 commandments? All of them. All the Israelites heard, and that's why you find this. Verse 18. God said, gave all these 10 commandments. We're not going into that. Verse 18. When the people saw the thunder and lightning and heard the trumpet and saw the mountain in smoke, they trembled with fear. They stayed at a distance and said to Moses, Speak to us yourself and we will listen, but do not have God speak to us or we will die. So who spoke? God spoke. We need to remember that God gave the 10 commandments in the hearing of all the Israelites living at that point of time. And that's why these people come and say, we don't want to hear God anymore. It's so difficult. It's so difficult. Man, you go and talk to Him and then you bring us the Word. Okay?
Verse 23 says that Moses said, you warned us not to bring the people up. I didn't know
Yeah. That is verse 23.
that they couldn't go up in that.
They couldn't go up the mountain. So Moses had to come down. Moses had to come down to the people. See, I very strongly believe that there was a reason why God gave this in the hearing of the people. Because if God gives this to Moses alone, are you getting it? People might say, man, you made up all this. You made it up all. So therefore, in order to show authenticity to what that God is saying this, what did He do? He spoke in the hearing of all the people. When you do something in the hearing of all the people, you cannot refute it. You cannot disprove it. Of course, on the 2 tablets, God wrote the same things He spoke to the people. Now that's where the written tradition started. But here what God did was, He spoke in the hearing of all the people. Verse 20, Moses said to the people, do not be afraid. God has come to test you, so that the fear of God will be with you to keep you from sinning. So this is a great sentence that tells you the secret of avoiding sin or not committing sin. Let me take back the word avoiding. Avoiding is not okay. You can avoid sin and do what? Still have your heart and mind on that sin. Yes or no? Yeah. So here, what does He say? The fear of God will be with you, and that fear of God will keep you from sinning. And that's what David says. I have hid thy word in my heart so that I might not sin against you. So the fear of the Lord will keep you from sinning. Is it not true of Joseph? With Joseph, it was an interaction between 2 people. What did he do? He said what? Shall I sin against my God? How can I sin against God? No, where is God there? There's just 2 people in that room. The fear of God. The fear of God. So he says, the fear of God will be with you to keep you from sinning. It's true even in our lives today. Even in our lives today. When Jody asked that question to the rabbi, if you don't believe in heaven or hell, then what stops you from committing a sin? I was looking for this answer. We didn't get it. We found another answer saying, okay, how many of you don't commit murder because you don't believe in this? You don't commit murder because what? Are you not committing murder because you are restrained? No. You're tied up, and that's why you're not committing sin or committing a murder? No. Even a free man would not do that. It's not a general thing. And for a believer especially, what? The fear of God will keep you from sinning. That is what is missing in people's lives today.
It says here that they couldn't go up there to gaze upon the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
So we still go back to no one has seen except Moses.
Yes. No, okay. This is the question that I asked so many preachers years and years and years and years. The same question. Did Moses see God is the question. Right?
Well, yes, because he didn't want the rest of the people to leave, so who's up there?
Yeah. See, God, Moses did not see God. He did not see God. There's a difference between saying he saw God and he saw the form of God.
Like the burning bush.
Like the burning bush. The reason I say this is, he says, show me your glory. Right? Moses says to God, show me your glory. What does God say? You cannot. Let me show you that. Exodus 33. Exodus 33. It's a good question. It's a good question. He says, verse 20, chapter 33, verse 20. But he said, you cannot see my face, for no one may see me and live. So if Moses is still alive, so what do you understand? He did not see God. Please remember one more thing, that there is a lot of smoke, thunder, lightning, lot of other things that are accompanying the voice of God.
He's a spirit. First John, it says no man has seen God at any time.
Yes. Nobody can see God and be alive. And I used to ask this question to any preacher that I saw when I was in my younger days. I would just go running to this man and ask him. Exodus 33 and verse 11. The Lord would speak to Moses face to face as a man speaks with his friend. And I used to pick up this verse and also go back to New Testament and say, what? Nobody can see God. Tell me, what is right? What is right? So I used to keep asking these questions until God showed me that nobody has seen God. Nobody has seen God. It's the form, or maybe in the form of a cloud. See, for example, when Jesus took baptism, right? Jesus took baptism. What came down? The dove came down. Dove is a symbol of the Holy Spirit. The voice from heaven came. Okay? So, the voice from heaven came and the dove also came. So, when you heard the voice, how many people heard the voice? All the people are on the earth. Right? On the Transfiguration Mount, the same story happened. Right? So, that's a trinity there. Okay? Now here what he's trying to say is, people could not have seen him, and nor even Moses. So when you say he saw God, we have to understand it's not literal. You don't take into the literal sense. It was a form of God. Maybe it was like a layer in between.
It just says gaze in this translation. I don't know. It's the NIV.
NIV? Which verse are you looking at?
At that 21st. It says go down and warn the people so that they do not break through to the Lord to gaze. And many of them perish.
Verse 21, yeah.
Yeah.
Said, do not force their way to see the Lord, and many of them perish. What translation is what you're reading? NIV?
New American.
Yeah, that's why. Because I have NIV, so.
I have the Rabbi.
Okay, Rabbi.
Are you the Rabbi?
Okay, whatever translation it is, this is what we understand, that no man can see God. Okay, let me give you another reason why no man can see God. Because if God allows an audience to one man and does not allow audience to another person, he's not an impartial God. He's partial. Right? Either he should be visible to everybody or nobody. And God is not respecter of persons. The question would be, why do you think, Moses, you are so special that God should talk to you, or God should show his face to you? People can always go back and say, fellow, you are a murderer. You ran out of the country. So, in the sight of God, everybody is equal. Therefore, there is no discrimination. Okay? So, therefore, here in chapter 20, you find verse 22. So in verse 20 we see that the way you keep from sinning, you don't sin, is by what? By having the fear of God. See, fear of God, something is operative even when there is no other person in your presence. That's why we have a word called integrity. That is sincerity, honesty, transparency. Whether anybody is watching you or not, are you the same? Are you the same? That's very, very important that we have to answer this question. Fear of God. Verse 22. Then the Lord said to Moses, tell the Israelites this, you have seen for yourselves that I have spoken to you from heaven. Do not make any gods to be alongside me. Do not make for yourselves gods of silver or gods of gold. Can you see that word there? 23. Do not make any gods to be alongside me. What do you mean by alongside me? Man, there's nobody equal to me. You can put me alongside any other God. Do you believe that? Do you believe that? Yes. Our God cannot be compared with any other God. I was thinking the unique quality of our God. If you have to tell this to a non-Christian, what is one quality that you will tell them about Jesus or God? What is one thing that you will tell them? You know one thing what you can tell them? He speaks. He speaks. Show me any other God who say about anything that you have heard people say, I heard him speak. Can you? He spoke to me. It's only Jesus Christ. It's only God. Because he can hear and he can also speak. That's a unique quality. Do you think it's so small? No. It's not to be discounted. Your God and my God can hear you and speak to you and me. Is such a powerful encouragement. A very, very powerful encouragement. Okay. In chapter 21, you suddenly find God giving some laws to the people. Now, all this while he was giving the commandments. Now, suddenly he changes it to the laws. And the law, he is talking about, the first thing he talks about is about a Hebrew servant. Please understand the way the scripture is written. There is a reason why this particular verse is at a particular spot. Okay? Now here you find, as soon as you hear about the 10 commandments, in chapter 21 you find suddenly the story of a Hebrew servant. What is the story? Verse 2, if you buy a Hebrew servant, he is to serve you for 6 years, but in the 7th year he shall go free without paying anything. If he comes alone, he is to go free alone. But if he has a wife and he comes, she is to go with him. If his master gives him a wife and she bears him sons or daughters, the woman and her children shall belong to her master, and only the man shall go free. Verse 5. But if the servant declares, I love my master and my wife and children and do not want to go free, then his master must take him before the judges. He shall take him to the door or the doorpost and pierce his ear with an awl. Then he will be his servant for life. Can you just tell me why this story is here in the scripture? If I gave you jigsaw puzzles and then gave you this part, would you really keep it after the 10 commandments?
Just leading up to the year of Jubilee, is it what this is?
Yeah, the mention of the year of the 7th year is certainly given there. But the reason why the Hebrew servant's life is written here is the question. The answer is this. You know what God is trying to tell? Don't try to obey my 10 commandments just to fulfill them. If you love me, you'll be able to fulfill all of them. Did you get it? If you love God, tell me something. If you love God, will you have any other God in place of God? No. If you love God, will you obey Him? Right. If you love God, will you honor your parents? If you love God, will you murder somebody? You know what is God trying to say here? What he's trying to say here is, don't do things just in a legalistic way. I gave you the 10 commandments. Oh, I have to check. Did I do this? Did I do this? No. How do you do that? If you love me, you don't need to keep a track of putting a check mark. If you love me, you'll take care of all that. And that's why when Jesus was asked, what is the supreme command? What was his answer? Love the Lord God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Why did he say? Why did he summarize everything into love the Lord your God? This is the answer. This servant, Hebrew servant, says, I love my master. So when he loves his master, what is he going to do? Is he going to obey the master 100%? Yes. Even if you kick this fellow out, what does he say? I want to come back. I love you so much. That's the example that God is giving here and says, hey, children, if you love me, you'll be able to fulfill this. So I summarize it in this way. People have failed to love God the way He has expected it. And that's why if you take this life of Jesus Christ, the kind of love that He showed, what is it called? Agape love. The kind of love that Jesus Christ showed, what happened? Because of that, was Jesus able to fulfill all the 10 commandments? Absolutely. Why? Because He loved His Father. Did you get the point there? So the whole idea of having this story of the Hebrew servant is to tell us, you need to love your God. You need to love your master. If this guy came and said what? I love my master, I don't want to go free. I want to be here, I want to die here. That's the commitment. That's the love that the servant shows. You and I are expected to show that kind of love. We all failed. That's why Jesus put a prototype. God put a prototype in front of us, a symbol of Jesus Christ, and said, follow Him. Okay, let's move on. And there are several other laws that you find. Verse 17, you see, anyone who curses his father or mother must be put to. And in the olden days, did people really do that? Absolutely. If there was a rebellious son, what did they do? Stoned him. If the parents came and told the community, hey, my son is rebellious, you know what? Now that guy is in the hands of the whole community. They'll make him stand there, throw stones and kill him. You know, the capital punishment of execution here in the United States is what? Lethal injection. That person doesn't even know that he is going to die. You sedate him. In that sedation, he's gone. So as he's closing his eyes, what? I'm losing my consciousness. I won't wake up, I know that. Okay? This is not like that. This is so painful. The stones hit you. There's bleeding. And why? Because you don't honor your father or your mother. If you curse your parents, you should be stoned to death. Now let's try to reverse it. If you loved God, would you honor your father and mother? What happened? You just escaped big trouble. So the secret is in loving God. So every time you read a law, try to reverse it and say, if you loved God, what would happen? If you had loved God, would this happen? So this is what we need to look at.
Well, I think that's the difference in following a law and then loving enough that God is in your heart. It's a proof of the pudding.
Exactly. Exactly. There are two people who were doing math. Okay, let's say both are doing math. Both are trying to solve the problem. But the difference is one loves the math and one does the math. Right? Why is he doing the math? Because if he doesn't do that, the teacher will send a note to the parents. In order to avoid that note from the teacher to the parents, this guy is doing the homework. But there's another guy who's doing his math because he says, I love this subject. Is there a difference? That's exactly what God is trying to teach his children. If you love me, everything falls in place. Okay, there you find verse 23. But if there is a serious injury, you have to take life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. What is this? This is what revenge is all about. What did Jesus say? If somebody slaps you on one cheek, what do? Turn the other one. Is it not something totally different? Jesus has taken it way ahead of these kind of laws. Right? That's why Christianity is a forgiving religion. Did you understand? What is uniqueness about Christianity is what? Forgiveness. Forgiveness. People don't understand the power of forgiveness. Okay? That's what happens here. Chapter 22. In chapter 22, I want you to look at a few things here. Verse 4. If the stolen animal is... Okay, verse 6. Verse 6. If a fire breaks out and spreads into the thorn bushes so that it burns the shocks of grain or standing grain or the whole field, the one who started the fire must make restitution. Did you understand what this is? You understand what this is? There is a field surrounded by thorn bushes so that you protect it. It's like a hedge, and somebody lights fire outside the thorn bush. So this fire engulfs the thorn bush. It spreads into the thorn bush. And because it's dry, thorn bush is usually dry, and it's dry, and then the fire rushes inside and the crop is burnt. So the guy who lit the fire outside the thorn bush has to pay a restitution. I remember a very great man, a very, very great man of God, used this statement in the last days of his life and make a public confession and say like this. He was a great man, but he went astray because of XYZ reasons. But as the Bible says, I will bring you back to myself. God really convicted this man, and he came and made a public confession before people, and he read this verse. And he said, do you know what that field is? That field is the ministry. That field is the ministry. And some fellow lit a fire. And what did he do? It burnt up the ministry. And this man made a public confession and said, you know who was that guy who lit the fire and burnt up all this? He said, it was me. A 90-year-old man made a public confession before thousands of people and said, I am the one who did this. The latter part of his story is amazing, the way God made him a great blessing to the people in the last 3 days of his life. He lived only 3 more days after that. Only 3 more days. But that's a powerful testimony for the rest of the people. So therefore, you must understand, what God is expecting is, anybody who messes with his work, he will take restitution. Do you get it? Sometimes we see some people trying to mess with the ministry of God, and we get emotional. We are human beings. We get angry and say, why is this not happening? Why is not God doing anything? Wait, hold on. God will take his revenge. He will avenge himself. And therefore, this is a great lesson for us. Okay? And then, verse 20. Whoever sacrifices to any god other than the Lord must be destroyed. Can you see the language? Anybody who sacrifices to any other god must be destroyed. Can you see the word destroy? Look at verse 26. If you take your neighbor's cloak as a pledge, return it to him by sunset, because his cloak is the only covering he has for his body. What else will he sleep in? When he cries out to me, I will hear, for I am compassionate. Oh my goodness. Can you see to what extent God is concerned about his children? My goodness. Somebody took a cloak from you, and that night you were shivering because you didn't have that cloak. And you say, Lord, I'm shivering, please help me. You know what God will say? I will hear that. Because you had only one cloak, and that you lent it to somebody, and if that guy doesn't return in time, by evening, and if you shiver and ask God and say, Lord, I'm shivering, that's enough, God will come down heavy upon that guy. I mean, in the nitpick details, in the minute things of the micromanaging, this is called micromanaging. Tell me something, if somebody took your cloak or not, who knows? Right? But God knows. If you cry out, God will listen to you. It's a powerful statement. Verse 28. Do not blaspheme God or curse the ruler of your people. Do not blaspheme God or curse the ruler of your people. Have you cursed the ruler of your people? God says, don't do that. Do not do that. It's a no-no. It's a no-no. Okay? In chapter 23, he says, verse 2, I love this. Do not follow the crowd in doing wrong. When you give testimony in a lawsuit, do not pervert justice by siding with the crowd, and do not show favoritism to a poor man in his lawsuit. Does it happen usually? That there is somebody who is supposed to make a strong decision. What does he do? In order to keep up his position, what does he do? He just follows with the majority crowd. He just goes with the majority crowd. God says, don't do that. Verse 4, if you come across your enemy's ox, what would you do if you came across enemy's ox? Throw 2 more stones at it, right? If your enemy's ox was there, it was wandering off, or a donkey wandering off, be sure to take it back to him. You see what God is trying to teach these people? Your enemy's ox or a donkey is wandering off, bring it back and give it to him. Verse 10. Now God is giving the law regarding the Sabbath to the land. For 6 years you are to sow your fields and harvest the crops, but during the 7th year let the land lie unplowed and unused. Then the poor among you or people may get food from it, and the wild animals may eat what they leave. Do the same with your vineyard and your olive grove. I want you to underline this. For 6 years you are to sow your fields and harvest the crops. 7th year, let the land lie unplowed and unused. You know why I asked you to underline this? When these same people, God is giving these cautions to them while they were yet in the desert. Okay? When they came into Canaan, you know what they did? They exactly did the opposite of this. They did not give rest to the land on Sabbath day. They kept plowing. And therefore, they did this for how many years? They did this for 490 years. So when they did this for 490 years, as somebody said, God will take his share, right? God will take his share. You remember these Israelites went into 70 years of Babylonian captivity? Yeah? You know, where did the number 70 come from? Who gave the number? God gave the number. Why 70? Why 70 years? Because 2 Chronicles chapter 36 verse 21. The land enjoyed its Sabbath rests. All the time of its desolation it rested until the 70 years were completed in fulfillment of the word of the Lord spoken by Jeremiah. The 70 years came for what? Because you didn't give 70 Sabbaths. 70 years you did not give Sabbath to the land. Therefore God said what? I'll take it. I'll give it Sabbath. So when these people are gone into captivity to Babylon, do you think anybody is going to till that ground? Nobody. God took his share. And therefore, this is what we learn. Whatever God tells us, if you don't obey, you know what God do? You'll go through a severe punishment. But God will take his share. That's what's happening here. Verse 12. 36. 2 Chronicles 36 and 21. And God gave these laws to these people in Leviticus 26 also about the Sabbath to the land, and said the same things reiterated here, and then said you have to give 25, chapter 25, give Sabbath to the land, do not sow, all these things, but did not obey that. Okay. Then not only that, God is a God who's not just asking you to follow rules and then obey them. He's also God who says, let's celebrate. Let's have fun. Okay? Let's celebrate. So verse 14. 3 times a year you are to celebrate a festival to me. What are the festivals? Verse 15. Feast of unleavened bread. Verse 16. Feast of harvest. And then feast of ingathering. You see? Our God is not a God who always says, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. He says, okay, let's enjoy. And that's the reason why many people, young people, don't want to come to God. They think, oh man, if I come to Jesus, I have to give up all these things. See, the God who gave you salvation will also give you satisfaction. Right? Tell me, have you seen any, if you are a Christian who has given his heart to the Lord, have you seen people upset? Or angry with their life? This afternoon I was talking to a lady at the bank. And we had a very good, very calm, very good time. And she was telling me she ran away from her house when she was 16. And then she came back home, and at the door her sister said, Dad's going to beat you now. So she said, alright, bye-bye, I'm not coming back home. So she went away. And after a few days she came and then took one of her sisters and went away. And her parents were not saved. They were not saved. But during this time they were saved. And then when these girls came back, the father said, you have to do this. These are the rules, these are the rules, these are the rules. They didn't follow the rules. They didn't follow the rules. You know what she said? By her own confession, she said, I married a wrong guy. I married a wrong guy. I made a mistake in my life. I wish I had listened to my dad. Now her dad is gone to be with the Lord. It's been 5 years. And now these girls sit and talk why their dad said, you cannot do this. We as Christians cannot do this. Why we need to behave like this. And they all relish those days and are so thankful to God for giving them such a father. Therefore, see, God says, whom I love, I will discipline. Right? If somebody you love, what do you do? You care for them. The ones who I love, I will discipline, is what God said. Therefore, that's why. See, you may ask something. This is a great statement I want to make here. The reason why God is giving all these laws to these people is because He said, you are my treasured possession. He said, you are my treasured possession. Therefore, I will give you these laws. Therefore, you have to obey me. So, for example, all the other people, did He give them any laws? No, because he said, "What? I don't mean you're to yourself. My children, I will care for them." That's what God is doing here. So he said, "We'll also celebrate." Verse 22. If you listen carefully to what he says and do all that I say, I will be an enemy to your enemies and will oppose those who oppose you. If you have not underlined it, you must underline this, enjoy this, and praise God that your enemy will be God's enemy. And God will oppose those who oppose you. What a powerful statement that is. It gives you so much of relief. I will be an enemy to your enemies. Okay. And he says, verse 25, worship the Lord your God, and his blessings will be on your food and water. I will take away sickness from among you, and none will miscarry or be barren in your land. I will give you a full lifespan. I will send my terror ahead of you and throw into confusion every nation you encounter. I will make all your enemies turn their backs and run. Did God do this for the Israelites? He sent the terror ahead of them. Jericho is a classic example. Rahab says, "Man, we heard what God did for you." What happened? The terror had already gone. She says, "Our hearts melted when we heard what God did for you." And so therefore these people had to just go and fight the battle and win it. God fights for you and me when we worship him. Okay? Look at verse 29. This is also very interesting. This is the answer you can give to somebody and say, why don't we become perfect the moment we are born again? Have you heard people saying this? Why doesn't God take us away as soon as we are born again? Or why doesn't God say, the moment you say, "Lord, forgive me of my sins," the moment you confess with your mouth and believe in your heart, why doesn't God immediately change you to a holy person, never to sin again? Look at verse 29. But I will not drive them out in a single year, because the land would become desolate and the wild animals too numerous for you. Little by little I will drive them out before you until you have increased enough to take possession of the land. Do you see the word, the phrases there? That's talking about spiritual maturity. I will not drive them out in 1 year, but I will drive them out little by little so that you will gain maturity. You know, May 27th, I'll be a Christian for 22 years. Looking at my age, and when I look back at my Christian experience, Christian life, I'm so thankful to God. When I tell people I was born again when I was 15, this lady I was speaking to at the bank, she said, "I'm so excited for you, Chandra, because I was born again at the age of 40. I lost 25 years of my precious life compared to you." I'm so thankful to God. I mean, do we take any credit for being born again? No. No, not at all. We are so thankful to God. And here, you look back and see how God has helped you mature. The things, if God gave us a chance to redo our life, man, that'd be great, isn't it? Yeah? Okay, I'll give you a chance again to restart afresh. If God gave us that chance, that'd be awesome. But you know what? God wants us to know one thing. Your mistakes, your experiences will help the coming generation. Is it not? That is why we sit with the seniors. I love to sit with the seniors, talk to them, learn from them some of the experiences. They talk to us and tell us. I look at their wisdom. They may not be as educated as somebody with a doctorate or a master's or something. But the kind of wisdom that they have, that the way they talk, the way they handle things, and the way they tell their experiences, that's a great lesson for us. And here you find God is telling them what is expected of a person when he's born again is you need to mature. Okay? Verse 32. Do not make a covenant with them or with their gods. Do not let them live in your land, or they will cause you to sin against me, because the worship of their gods will certainly be a snare to you. So what is God saying? That worship should come to me and me only. If you worship anything else, what happens? It becomes a snare. Right? Just sit back, relax, and look at what's happening all over the world. Look at how America is changing. Right? 20 years ago, did you ever think about same-sex marriages? What happened? Things have changed. What happened? People have started worshipping money more than God. People have started worshipping American dream more than God. Are we not supposed to have good life, good houses, good cars? Yes. But they're not never above God. You can never put God in a second place. I read it in a book. It says if you're giving God a second place, it means you're giving God the last place. Because His place is always number one. So therefore, God is giving all these instructions. See, in the next class, we will come to the tabernacle and we will use the projector and the screen, and we will have a very thorough study of all the elements of the tabernacle. Okay? Let's pray.